Hello, everyone. Welcome back. I want to talk to you guys about the Whiskey Rebellion today. Okay, so the Whiskey Rebellion started in September of 1791. Okay, and it continued for about I think something like 4 or 5 years after that. So it was ongoing, but it started in September of 1791. And the significance of this is that the Second Amendment was ratified in December of 1791. Okay, so in the year that the Second Amendment was ratified, there was an ongoing rebellion against the government. Okay, so this is significant with regards to how the current Supreme Court looks at the Second Amendment, right, which is text, history, and tradition. Okay, so um, now the text part is that they look at the Second Amendment and they say, okay, what was the meaning of the words when they were written? Okay, so what did well-regulated mean in 1791? They researched it and they said, okay, back then it meant in good working order. Okay, it didn't mean government controlled. Okay, so that's the first thing they look at is the text. Okay, then the next thing that they look at is, okay, what with regards to what type of gun control might be acceptable. What they have said is that the gun control has to have existed as law on the books and enforced around the time of the ratification of the Second Amendment. Okay, and I think the cutoff point is like 1826 or so, when the last founding father basically died off. But they have to go back to that founding era and look at laws that are on the books and enforced. And if they existed at that time, then that type of gun control would also be would be allowed today. Okay, so that's how the current Supreme Court has said that they're going to look at the Second Amendment. Now, if the composition of the Supreme Court changes, I mean, all bets are off. I mean, they're just gonna, I mean, if Democrat appointed judges take control of it, I mean, they're just gonna come up with whatever they want. Anyway, the way they do it is they decide what results they want, and then they backtrack to make the Constitution fit the results that they want. Okay, so that's how the Democrat appointed judges work. The Republican constitutionalist judges, not that they're gun rights or individual rights or anything like that, but the way that they think is, okay, what did the words mean, what they were written, and that's how they're going to interpret it. So it kind of works to our disadvantage because the Democrat judges are result based, like they want to get to a certain result. The Republican appointed judges are procedural based. So they're like, okay, we're going to go through the steps, and whatever the results are, the results are. Okay, so that basically the anti-gunners have an advantage, whereas like they have to work a lot less because those judges, the Democrat judges, are always going to be anti-gun. With the judges, the conservative judges, right? We have to convince them that this is what the Second Amendment meant when it was written. So we are definitely at a disadvantage. So that's why this is really important. It's important for us to bring light, okay, to you know what there was insurrections, there was crime, there was murders at the time that the Second Amendment was ratified, and the question becomes, how did they deal with it at the time? Did they ban guns? Right? Did they come up with gun control laws? And the answer to that is no. Okay, so this is an example of that when the Second Amendment was ratified, right, in December of 1791, there was already an ongoing rebellion, right, a violent rebellion, and as a result of this, the solution that they came up with was not to ban guns, right, not to restrict firearms or gun rights or anything. Okay, so they looked for some other solution. So this is the type of argument that could be made to the Supreme Court that they will respect. Okay, because here's the thing: we have to look at how the Supreme Court thinks and arguments that would be persuasive to them. Okay, So, I mean, I could sit here and argue, tell you guys all day that shall not be infringed means shall not be infringed, but that's not going to cut it. Okay, so that's why we have to spread this information. So, prior to the Second Amendment, there's three insurrections that either happened or were in the process or being planned. Okay, so the first one was the Newburgh conspiracy, and I did cover that in a prior video. This one happened in 1783 during the American Revolution by George Washington's soldiers. Okay, so George Washington's soldiers, they were not being paid by the Continental Congress. They were not being supplied, and the Continental Congress had not agreed to pay them a pension, right, after the war. So they got together and they said they were going to do one of two things, right? They were basically just going to abandon the war effort and go home, okay? Or they were going to march on the Continental Congress and force them to capitulate, okay? So that basically amounted to a coup. Okay, so this was something that was actually planned, and this was stopped by George Washington. He gave a very moving speech that basically caused the men to back down. It did have an effect because the Continental Congress did hear about this, and they said, "Hey, George Washington managed to stop them this time. He may not be able to stop them next time." So they did actually get their pension as a result of this, right? They got a 5-year pension after service. Okay, now collecting it is going to be a whole other story. Okay, so there was another one in 1786. Again, this is prior to the ratification of the Constitution. The Constitution was ratified in June of 1788. Okay, so in 1786 we've got Shay's rebellion in Massachusetts. So with Shay's rebellion, again, these are American Revolutionary War veterans. They've been promised a pension. They're still basically owed war pay. Okay, they're not getting it. On top of that, they got debts. They're being taxed, and they have an uprising. Okay, so again, and now this was in the first one, it didn't turn into a shooting conflict. This one did actually turn into a shooting conflict, it was put down, but again, it was also successful in the sense that Massachusetts decided to back off a little bit and reduce taxes and give them more time to pay to pay their debts. The cost of that, I think, was like 20 men were wounded, and I think 2 were killed and 2 were hung, right? And I guess the people that were leading this. Now, that's not Shay. I think Shay was more of a protester type of guy. I don't think, because he wasn't one of the guys that was hung. He was pardoned along with everybody else. There was about 1,500 people involved in this. But the point is that you have an actual rebellion here, right? With shooting going on against the government, right? And this happened in 1786. This is prior to the Second Amendment being ratified. So at the time that the Second Amendment was drafted and being debated, they were aware of these insurrections. They were aware that these things could happen. They were aware that they were just common everyday murders and stuff like that. So one of the things that the Supreme Court will it's one of the things that's a persuasive argument to the Supreme Court, as I've come to understand it. And the way I've come to understand this is by following Mark Smith at the Four Boxes Diner. Okay, this guy's a constitutional scholar. This guy speaks before the Federalist Society. He writes books. He's one of those guys that the Supreme Court justices are looking at his writings. Okay, because he's up there. So now he didn't mention these 3 conspiracies, right, or these 3 rebellions. But he kind of gave me the framework to come up with this because he explained to me how the Supreme Court thinks, right, and what would be persuasive arguments to them. And this fits that bill, okay? So that's why I want to circulate this information. Okay, so we got Shay's rebellion, and again, the answer to that is not to ban guns. It's not to restrict gun rights. It's not background checks. Nothing like that. Okay. So then in 1791 now, September 1791, the whiskey rebellion kicks off. Now, and this is in western Pennsylvania. Now, a lot of people might say, hey, what's up with this whiskey? Why are people making such a big deal out of whiskey? Now, whiskey was a really big deal because remember, this is at the founding of the nation. This is prior to the Federal Reserve. Okay, so this is a time when there's no currency, so people are bartering. Okay, so whiskey is the thing that they're using to barter. Okay, they're taking their wheat, right, their excess wheat, and what they're doing is they're turning it into whiskey, which is condenses it, right. So instead of having, let's say, 1,000 pounds of wheat to barter with, now they got like 100 pounds of whiskey to barter with. Okay, people were actually paid in whiskey, right. So this is a bartering commodity. Okay, so this is really important, and essentially this tax on whiskey amounted to an income tax. Okay, now the problem, part of the problem, not the only problem, but part of the problem is that this tax had to be paid in cash, right? What's cash doesn't exist yet. Basically, at this time, the banks were creating money. Okay, essentially it's like banknotes, So, but the thing is, if you're out in Western PA, you've not got to travel to the other side of Pennsylvania, right, to like Philadelphia, right, which is going to take you weeks and it's going to be really expensive to convert your whiskey into cash so you can pay your taxes. So this was like completely a tremendous inconvenience. Okay, and not only that, if you didn't pay this and you were brought to court, again, you had to travel across the state, which was at that time was not easy to do, to a Philadelphia court. So this became a really big deal. Okay, so I just wanted to give you guys some info there about why whiskey was so critical, so important. It was a currency. It was also medicinal. It's alcohol, so so it was medicinal. And it was something that people brewed in their homes, right? The small farmer, every small farm had a distillery, right? This tax was on the manufacturer, okay? So if you're brewing this stuff in your house, you're technically a manufacturer. So they wanted to tax you, and now of course you had to pay the tax in the currency that was in cash, which you don't have because you're on the other side of Pennsylvania and you just don't deal with cash. So this tax was impossible. It's like, me taxing you and telling you got to pay me like in goose eggs, right? Unless you have a goose that lays eggs, how are you going to pay me in goose eggs, So this became a really big deal. So this rebellion lasted for some 4 years. George Washington himself basically went out there to kind of quash it. It's unfortunate that it was not successful, okay? Because they were 100% right, and in fact, it was successful to the extent that they did back down. Right, they backed down on the enforcement of it, okay, and also it was repealed when Jefferson became president. He got this thing repealed, okay. So that's something that all three of these rebellions were actually successful. People actually did get what they wanted as a result of these rebellions. So because a lot of people will reference these rebellions and say that they were not successful. In the end, yeah, they were successful. Okay, and the bad guy in this is Alexander Hamilton. He's the guy on the $10 bill. Okay, he's basically a banking type dude. Now, the interesting thing is that Alexander Hamilton died in a duel against Burr, who was a sitting vice president. Okay, so even Alexander Hamilton, who's like an institutionalist, right? Apparently was in favor of gun rights because in favor of dueling, right? He was a duelist, so he agreed to have a duel on the Burr, and he lost. Okay, so. That's another little piece of interesting information. So these are basically what I'm giving you here is like little things for sticking in your heads and look up, right? You want to look this stuff up and collect more information, kind of put it into a mental Rolodex and pull it out at the right time, okay? So again, the thing is we got 3 rebellions here. that all happened either before or during the ratification of the Second Amendment. And the answer that they came up with was not to ban guns, not to restrict gun rights. I mean, it doesn't say right to bear arms except for those that participate in insurrections. They didn't do it, right? So that's really important. Okay, so basically, shall not be. I mean, they couldn't have picked a stronger word. Shall not be infringed, which means no exceptions. Okay. Now the other question is when it says the right of the people to bear arms. Who are the people? The same people as in we the people. Okay. So when you got the anti-gunners try to tell you that it's some type of a state's right or a collective right, no. I mean, it's we the people, right? It's just the same. The right of the people to bear arms those are the same people that they reference at the top of the Constitution where it says we the people. Okay, same people. Okay, so drop some comments below. Let me know what you guys think of this. But yeah, I just wanted to kind of like blast this out there, right? In the same year that the Second Amendment was ratified, there was an ongoing insurrection against the government, okay? Because that's the popular word today, insurrection. And this was a real insurrection, right? A real rebellion, with guns, right? With people shooting at each other, people shooting at the government, right? Not like that January 6th, setup where the so-called insurrectionists are staying inside of the velvet ropes and doing whatever they're being told by security and getting guided tours and stuff like that. Okay, so let me know what you guys think. Drop some comments, circulate this so that other people find out about it. I'll talk to you all soon.